Public power is actually an entity that is owned by the public. So it'd be like a municipality. Nebraska is a public power state. Every single utility that is in Nebraska is a public power entity.
Yep.
And cooperatives as well are public power entities. They're nonprofit, and that spreads down all the way to the municipal level as well. So we have a lot of municipal utilities that are public power entities as well.
We're live at the Midwest Solar Expo. I'm Nico Johnson, your host at the Suncast Media Zone, brought to you by Solar Simplified. I am joined today by Molly Brown, the EVP of Corporate Strategy for GenPro Energy Solutions. Molly, it's good to finally meet you.
Yeah, nice to finally meet you as well.
I've heard of a lot of things about you, mostly how energetic and understanding of the market you are, and that you particularly have a passion for an area that I have done a little bit, but not a ton of research on. That is public power. So
yes.
First I want to ask, because I know this is a question that most folks probably have for you, how do you define public power?
So public power is actually an entity that is owned by the public. So it'd be like a municipality.
Yeah.
Nebraska is a public power state.
Yeah.
So every single utility that is in Nebraska is a public power entity.
Yep.
And cooperatives as well are public power entities. So,
Yeah.
they're nonprofit. They have a little bit of a different way of operating, and that spreads down all the way to the municipal level as well. So we have a lot of municipal utilities that are public power entities as well.
There's more than 3,000 muni and co-op entities, I think, in the United States.
Yes, there are quite a few. Nebraska alone has over 230 some odd, I believe.
That's a lot. Tell me a bit about your experience, your background in underserved rural markets. How does that factor into your work?
Yeah, so obviously we're based out of Rapid City, South Dakota, just outside of Rapid City. Very rural area. We are not very densely populated at all. So we deal with a lot of areas where you're going to have smaller substations. You're not going to have distribution systems that are very robust at all.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with a little bit different types of project structures in order to be able to support the grid and to support what the client's desires, needs, and wants, as well as working with those utilities, who are dealing with aging infrastructure, who are dealing with more remote areas, who are dealing with more extreme weather events, because, you get one snowstorm that blows through, take one line down, and you could take out an entire town.
Yeah. Could you expound a bit on the project structures? You mentioned getting creative with project structures. What does that look like when you're at this? I mean, most of the projects I imagine that you guys are talking about are under that 20 megawatt scale.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of limitations on the sizes that we can do. So when we're looking at putting a project in, we're really looking at the substation infrastructure and what the minimum base loads are.
Yeah.
We're also in a super ag heavy area.
Yeah.
So even if they have a great summer load, we could go down to maybe that substation only support a megawatt when it's off season.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of swings.
Oh, I see. You have to
in
balance the
amount.
seasons.
Yes.
That's
correct.
a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
What's that swing look like typically in a ag community?
Oh, it could be megawatts and megawatts.
Wow.
So we had one substation that I think swung from like a, 5 to 7 megawatt load to under 1, just because of all the irrigation systems that.
And you have to size it for the minimum load.
Correct.
Oh, wow. What drives the sizing for the minimum load? They can't support the
They're
export?
not allowed to cross boundaries.
Uh-huh.
So one public power entity's energy cannot flow onto another public power entity. So you can never go across certain substation kind of dividing lines.
One of the things I know that you're really excited about is the infusion of capital from the IRA and the EPA funding for these rural development programs. Talk to me a bit about how the infusion of this capital will affect the development of solar in these markets.
Yeah, I think it'll help open some doors and boundaries that we just haven't been able to get projects over the finish line.
Yep.
And that is with some of the smaller municipal utilities. We've got really interesting utility rate structures as well. And so we just haven't been able to get to a financial model that made sense for the actual municipal utilities. So I think the infusion will help with some of that and help offset some capital costs so we can make it make sense.
Can you talk a bit about the legislation and kind of what size numbers we're talking about here?
So a lot of capital got infused, especially into the Dakotas and Nebraska through the EPA's Solar for All program. they still have a year to figure out exactly how those funds are going to be dispersed through projects throughout the region. There is a residential focus on that, but that also could mean that we can do, residential microgrids for certain neighborhoods or community solar projects for certain neighborhoods. And these were projects that just weren't able to get funding before because a lot of, the bigger, larger national developers just know the financial model is a little bit tougher in South Dakota, the Dakotas, and Nebraska.
Is there anything particular about the way these projects are being developed that creates specific hurdles that are unique to these kinds of projects that you constantly have to overcome as an EPC?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdles that we come with are those kind of restrictions on how much electricity we can use and where, because then you're not able to get to economies of scale.
Yep.
You're having to try and figure out how to do smaller projects, smaller pockets with obviously are more expensive than if I can do a 5 to 10 megawatt community solar system, which you just can't do in a lot of areas.
One of the things that you are speaking about here at the Midwest Solar Expo is a project that you all experienced a catastrophic hailstorm on. It's a little under 5 megawatts in Nebraska. Talk to me about that experience. I know that this project was your baby.
Yes, it is my baby. I cried big fat tears when we got the pictures of the hail damage. It was an extreme weather event. So we're not talking about just a normal hailstorm. This was a supercell that spawned tornadoes. It took out a local coal mine. They thought there was going to be loss of life for parts of this storm. And then it just happened to roll through and hit Scottsbluff. We're talking about huge hail balls and an extended period of time that you don't typically see.
Sure.
And so
what was the big, you used your hands here, like were they generous?
Grapefruit size.
Wow, grapefruit hail.
Yeah. So there were
solar panels aren't tested for that.
No. And super high winds. I think the winds were clocking at 90 miles per hour with grapefruit size hail for like a 2-hour duration. So it was a major storm. One of the great things about the panel that I'm excited about is that we have 2 insurance people on the panel. And so we're going to talk about how these types of events are really affecting the insurance markets and what you can do on the front side of a project to help mitigate some of that risk.
Yeah.
So whether it be your product selection, what modules you buy, what tracker you have spec'd into that, how you can really start that mitigation on the front side of a project and not just during construction or O&M.
What are some of the things that you know now on the backside of remediating this project that you wish you'd known ahead of time?
I think it's always going to be ultra important. And again, this was a storm that
storm of the century.
Came out of the blue, but to have really, really good meteorological tracking for systems that are going to be in the Midwest, auto stow as
quickly
much and as quickly and as often as you possibly can.
Right.
Those are probably the 2 major things. But
a lot of folks are saying like, well, we can auto stow, but what if it sends false signals? Then we're we're needlessly losing power. What would you say to that?
You'd rather lose power than lose your solar system.
I mentioned it was a catastrophic event. How much of your total 5 megawatt plant did it affect? How many of the solar panels?
It was all of the solar panels. There were a couple hundred that looked like they didn't have damage, but they really could have had micro cracks or anything.
Right.
So we fully recycled every single one of those.
That was my
modules.
next question. Yeah.
99% certified recycling.
Yeah.
So nothing went to the landfill. What did amaze me, though, was that none of the ancillary equipment needed to be replaced.
None of the racking, none of the inverters.
Like a few racking pieces and parts, but not a lot. The inverters were fine. All the AC equipment
was
was
shielded
fine.
everything.
It was
perfectly. Was it a fixed tilt or a tracker?
It was a tracker.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where we were unsure of, if we flip this thing back on, whether or not we were going to have to go in and replace some of the AC parts, or whether it was going to still be fully operational.
Are there any steps that you're taking now based on this project that your next customers benefit from as a result?
Yeah, I think product selection is something I'm going to really take to heart with some of the thicker glass, and then really taking a look at the tracker solutions.
How fast they can stow.
How fast and what the tilt angle is going to be.
Oh, yeah. Is there a tilt angle that's preferred?
Yeah, well, there's a tilt angle that's going to affect your insurance prices.
Oh, really?
So the insurance companies
Enlighten me.
Yeah, they're starting to look at the tilt angle
Yeah.
and that adjustment, and they're going to like base prices on how deep that tilt angle can go, because the deeper you can go, the likelihood of an event happening is smaller. So
Sure.
that was
What's
something
do
new
you
and
know what
smart.
the average stow angle is for a solar tracker right
Usually
now?
around like 52 to 60
Uh-huh.
degrees.
And is
what
insurance
you're
looking for
at.
something more aggressive than that?
They are looking for something a little more aggressive. The manufacturers, I think, are getting close, but not quite there.
Okay.
But I know the manufacturers are also looking
Yeah.
at that. So
Also, there are products. I mean, we've had folks from Amperon on. There are products right now, and LightSource BP is looking into different technologies for accurately predicting in real time when these events are going to happen.
yeah,
Kevin Christie said that all of LightSource entire fleet now is automatically stowing at the first sign of a storm. Yeah, I think this is going to become a standard practice across.
it's going to be very important to have auto stow. And, some of our older systems that we've installed in this region, they just didn't have that at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're going to be able to, get after the fact auto stow on some of the older systems.
Is there a region where we don't have to worry about hail, and a region is there a corridor that you look at as a developer to try and determine, is this kind of extreme weather event going to happen?
Well, most of our stuff is in the hail zone of the
Yeah.
Midwest. So that's just something that we think about all the time.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that all of our roof mount systems, none of those have had any damage.
Oh, wow.
But it's because a lot of times our storms will come from the northwest and the panels are facing fixed south on those. So we've never had a problem with a roof mount system.
How interesting.
Yeah,
The quirks of solar.
I know.